Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. So, before we read, let's invoke the blessing of the Lord. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुर्वे नमः वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः ईश्वरा परमा कृष्णः सच्चिदानन्दविग्रहः अनादिरादिर्गोविन्दः सर्वकारणकारणम् जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तविंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees, we have been reading the book Trinadapi Sunichena, and Friday Ishwar Krishna Prabhu has read. So today we are starting from page number 128. Srila Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. And the title of the chapter, The Source of Envy and Intolerance. Section, Give up your so-called enjoyment. Everyone wants to be the enjoyer and the masters in this world. Therefore, there is no such enmity and quarreling. Sorry, everyone wants to be the enjoyer and masters in this world. Therefore, there is so much enmity and quarreling. Enviousness and intolerance is perpetual. Thus, this teaching is for us. Sadhu teaches, Shastra teaches, Krishna Prite Bhoga Tyaga. Give up all your enjoyment for the pleasure of Krishna, because Krishna is the only enjoyer. Therefore, we have to give up our enjoyment. We have sadhana process for sadhakas. The beginner stage of bhakti, sadhana bhakti, is Vaidhi bhakti. We have strict regulations, sadhana vidhi. First, there is no sense enjoyment, no fish eating, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, no sense enjoyment. Give up all these things. We have four regulative principles, and they are to be strictly followed. Then on Ekadasi, we fast twice a month. Give up all eating and all enjoyment. Fasting for what? We fast for Krishna Priti, pleasure of Krishna. Mahaprabhu came as a teacher, Sadhu Guru Acharya, and this is his teaching, Krishna Priti Bhoga Tyaga. Krishna Priti Bhoga Tyaga. Krishna is the only enjoyer. You are not the enjoyer. Thus give up all your so-called enjoyment for Krishna's pleasure. Therefore we say, Kama Krishna Pane. O Krishna, please take away all my lusty desires. Hridaya Roga Kama. It is my heart's disease that I want to enjoy. You are the only enjoyer. Enjoy me. I am to be enjoyed by you. This is Kama Krishna Pane. Therefore, Krishna Priti Bhoga Tyag. For the pleasure of Krishna, you give up all your own enjoyment. That is the meaning of Krishna Priti Bhoga Tyaga. So, dear devotees, Bhagavad Gita also tells the same, right? Bhoktaram yagna tapasam. Krishna is the only enjoyer, and we are to be enjoyed. Very clearly mentioned that Krishna is the only enjoyer. Now, yesterday, while coming from temple, my daughter was asking that different philosophy tell different things. And I was telling that Bhagavad Gita is the universal. All the philosophers, they accept Bhagavad Gita. But accepting Bhagavad Gita means the instruction given in Bhagavad Gita to be accepted. Otherwise, if I say I accept Bhagavad Gita, it's a lip service, isn't it? Accepting भगवत गीता को मानना मतलब भगवत गीता में कही हुई बातों को मानना, right? So instruction to be accepted, and Krishna clearly says that aham sarvasya prabho matta sarvam pravartate. That Krishna is everywhere, everything emanates from Krishna. Matta partaram nanyat kinchit asti dhananjaya. There is nothing above Krishna, isn't it? Brahmaji says Ishvara Parma Krishna. Lord Shiva says Aradhana nam sarvesham Vishnu maradaram varam. And Krishna himself says, Aham Adirhi Devana. He is the source of all demon demigods. So he is the only enjoyer. Now, so-called enjoyer in this material world, where is the enjoyment? Having any, take any material enjoyment, right? After we do bhoga of that, can somebody say, oh, now I'm tript, I'm fully satisfied? No, same burning desire again arises. There's no tripti here. Rather, you hanker more. It burns more in heart. But Krishna Priti, when we are in association of Krishna, right, your bliss increases just by remembering the pastimes of Krishna or the places you visited for Krishna. Your bliss increases. Imagine any Kartik month you did Vrindavan Parikrama, maybe 10 years back. Even now you recall, you feel the bliss. You're not there at that place, but just by recalling, you feel the bliss. It's not burning you, but it feels the bliss, right? So that's the thing, because we are spiritual entity. We are not material entity. Yesterday in Sunday school, when children were asking why people say my soul, I said that's a wrong sentence. There's nothing called my soul. You are the soul. For your body, you can say my body, my leg, my hand. But you are the soul, and you are part and parcel of Krishna. And since you are part and parcel of Krishna, the only enjoyment we feel when the soul get connected with the super soul, because that's from it. That's where it come from. And that is, it's like a fish. Fish can be happy only in the water. You take out of the fish out of water, no happiness. So similarly, as long as we connected ourselves with Krishna or remain in association with Krishna, Krishna's devotee, Krishna's paraphernalia, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna prasadam, we always remain happy. And that's the recipe for happiness. Next section. He will give what I deserve. We have strict regulation in sadhana stage. When the disciple is under strict discipline, there will be no question of enviousness and intolerance. What I deserve, my master will give me. I do not know what my needs are. He knows best. What I deserve, he will give. By his arrangement, by his will, everything takes place. I am his servant. My duty is to render loving service unto him and give him all pleasure and enjoyment. When this realization comes, there is no question of enmity, rivalry, intolerance, fighting, or battles, nothing. Why will there be enmity, rivalry, and intolerance? Those who want to lord it over and enjoy are demons. This is the only reason that there is enmity, rivalry, and intolerance in this world. So, this faith, dear devotees, what I deserve, my master will give me. Right? This faith, that dependency on Krishna, is very much required. And Krishna will fulfill all the desire. Of course, he is a responsible parents. Child also desires too many chocolates, but parents knows that teeth will be spoiled with too many chocolates. So responsibly they give. Similarly, Krishna fulfill desire if it is favorable for you, or if he knows you will use responsibly, right? That's why Tyaga means what we can renounce. See, we can renounce only that thing which belong to us. No, nothing belong to us here. Then what can you renounce, right? See, when we give charity, you can't give charity from others' pocket, isn't it? You give charity from your own pocket. No? Now, here in this material world, what belong to us? Nothing. We ourselves belong to Krishna. So we cannot renounce others' property. Everything is property of Krishna. But what we can do, whatever is allocated to us, we have to engage in the service of Krishna. Hari Sambandhi Vastuna. Everything to be engaged. Our whole body can be engaged in the service of the Lord. Our senses, our mind, and all the paraphernalia. Actually, a person should stay at his home as a guest. We should stay at our home as a guest because Krishna is the proprietor. We are the servant staying at home to serve Krishna. That time when you wash utensils, when your wife asks you to wash utensils, you will enjoy because Krishna is the proprietor. Krishna is the center. That's why we enjoy washing utensil at temple. But at home, that's the difference. All right. So now we'll read Srila Prabhupada Leela Mrita. Srila Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj ki jai. So Prabhupada Leela Mrita, let me see where we left on Friday. Page number 288. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Satsvarup Das Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Okay. So we are in the chapter Let There Be a Temple. August 12. Prabhupada felt very weak. It was on the afternoon of his appearance day, and he was sitting at his desk in the main room of his house. He lay down on his seat and put his head against one of the arm pillows. The following day, he felt so weak he could not walk or stand. He had no appetite and ran a fever of 104 degrees. A local doctor arrived and examined Prabhupada. Malaria. He prescribed some medication, which Prabhupada took once or twice and then refused. A second doctor came and prescribed different medicines. Stop bringing these doctors, Prabhupada said. No doctor can cure me. It was August monsoon season, and many devotees fell sick. When Srutakriti, who had recently returned to his post as Prabhupada's personal servant, contact, contracted malaria, Kuladhari, who had come to Vrindavan to attend the temple opening, volunteered to assist. Then Kuladhari, Kuladhari got malaria. Other devotees became ill with malaria, jaundice, dysentery, various digestive problems. The weather was overcast, hot and humid, and thousands of varieties of insects began appearing. For several days at a time, the sky would be cloudy, the temperatures in the 90s. Then sun would come out and steam everything up with almost intolerable heat. It was Vrindavan's most unhealthy season. As Prabhupada's condition worsened, the devotees became morose and even fearful for their spiritual master's life. They brought Prabhupada's bed out where it was cooler on the small patio outside his house. His servant would massage or fan him. Days passed and Prabhupada did not eat, except for a few grapes and some slices of oranges. This was the way his father had died. He said, by not eating. Such remarks frightened Prabhupada's disciples all the more, and they began visiting the samadhis of the Goswamis to pray that Prabhupada would be cured. One evening, Rishikesha stayed up all night near Prabhupada's room, chanting softly a continuous kirtan of Hare Krishna. Prabhupada liked it. This kirtana, he said, is what actually gives us life. After that, devotees took turns so that there was always kirtana. Prabhupada explained that his illness was due to the sins of the ISKCON leaders, 80% of whom were not strictly following the rules and regulations, he said. Even in Vrindavan, some of the devotees were not regularly rising at 4 a.m. Since Prabhupada was speaking little, he had only briefly mentioned this cause of his illness. But brief as it was, it crushed his disciples. As for who was guilty, each disciple would have to say for himself, but in a mood of, oh God, what have we done? All the disciples in Vrindavana immediately became very attentive to the rules and regulations. In the morning Bhagavatam class, the devotees who lectured regularly discussed the subject as explained in Srila Prabhupada's books. At the time of initiation, Krishna absolves the initiate of all karmic reactions due to due for past due sinful acts. The spiritual master, however, as the representative of Krishna, also shares in removing the disciple's karma. Krishna, being infinite, can never be affected by such karma, whereas spiritual master, although completely pure, is finite. The spiritual master, therefore, partially suffers the reaction for a disciple's sins, sometimes becoming ill. Jiva Goswami warns that spiritual master should not take too many disciples because of the danger of accepting an overload of karma. Not only does spiritual master accept the previous karma of the disciples, but if disciples commit sins after initiation, then for those also spiritual master may sometimes become ill. Prabhupada said that his misdeed was accepting so many disciples, but he had no choice for spreading Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master sometimes suffers, he said, so that disciples may know due to our sinful activities, our spiritual master is suffering. And this always had a sobering effect on any would be offender. But now, for the first time, Prabhupada was specifically blaming his disciples for a serious illness. By neglecting their spiritual master's most basic instructions, they were causing him great distress. They understood that their spiritual master was no longer no ordinary malaria victim, and they knew they had to correct their mistakes and pray to Krishna that Prabhupada would get better. Prabhupada's condition was so critical and implications of his statements so broad that his secretary Brahmananda Swami, though it is though it best to notify the entire International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Because Prabhupada was pleased by 24-hour Kirtana, Brahmananda Swami thought that this program might be introduced in every ISKCON temple in the world. A few telegrams were sent, and word quickly spread that every temple should hold continuous kirtan, petitioning Krishna for Prabhupada's recovery. It reminded some of the senior disciples of 1967 when they had stayed up all night chanting and praying for Prabhupada's recovery from an apparent heart attack. At that time, Prabhupada had encouraged them to chant a hymn to Lord Narasimhadev and to pray, quote, "Our master has not finished his work. Please protect him." Due to the sincere prayers of the devotees, Prabhupada had said, Krishna had saved his life. Now in 1974, there were many devotees than in 1967, and all of them were praying for Prabhupada's recovery. But also, from what Prabhupada had said, there were also more devotees to misbehave and cause him pain. That message, quote, 80% of the leaders of my disciples are not following the rules and regulation, and that is why I am suffering, was not telegram, and it was too heavy. Prabhupada had come to Vrindavan for a celebration, but there had been none. Now he was very sick, and his servants was carrying him in his arms to and from the bathroom. Other devotees were also massaging and serving him very sincerely. And there was always kirtan for him. Meanwhile, he simply depended on Krishna and waited to get better so that he could go on with his work. While he tolerated his condition as the mercy of Krishna, he suddenly received word that governor of Uttar Pradesh was coming to visit him. The governor, a Muslim named Akbar Ali Khan, was traveling in the area, and Seth Bishan Chand, a friend of Prabhupada, and the governors had recommended that the governor visit the temple. Prabhupada thought that perhaps governor would agree to help devotees, at least in such matters as getting government permission for steel and cement. Therefore, despite his failing health, he insisted that devotees hold a reception in the courtyard, and he would personally go out and greet the governor. Lying on his back and speaking in a faint voice, he ordered a feast to be cooked and tables and chairs to be arranged in the courtyard. Devotees pleaded with Prabhupada to allow them to do everything themselves and tell the governor that Prabhupada was very ill. He has come, Prabhupada said. I have to go out and meet him. Shrutakirti dressed Prabhupada in a fresh silk dhoti. Prabhupada tried to apply the Vaishnava tilaks to his forehead, but even that was a struggle and took more than 5 minutes. When they were ready to go, Prabhupada asked his servant, have I put my tilak? He seemed almost delirious from the fever and was unable to stand. Shrutakirti and others carried him in a chair and placed him in the middle of the courtyard. When they had arranged several tables with prasadam and Prabhupada's books, just before governor's arrival, many policemen and soldiers had arrived, roping off the area, directing traffic in front of the temple, and holding people outside until the governor arrived. Gunnar Nava had rolled a long red carpet from the edge of the property into the temple courtyard, and devotees lined both sides of the carpet, chanting with kartalas and mridangas. When governor arrived, Surabhi presented him with a garland. Immediately removing the garland, governor walked down the red carpet and into the courtyard. Prabhupada stood. Devotees were amazed to see Prabhupada standing straight and shaking the governor's hand. Prabhupada and the governor stood together for a while and then sat down. Except for the guest, everyone present knew that Prabhupada was not capable of such excursion. They saw him shivering and trembling, yet trying to smile and be gracious with his guest. Devotees were in great anxiety, thinking that Prabhupada's life might end at any moment. Yet he took part in sociable pretense, along with their spiritual master. The governor, on invitation, gave a speech talking about how India's future lay in the industry. Then Prabhupada stood to speak, leaning against his chair. His eyes were very dark, and he was barely able to focus his vision. Although he had spoken very little for almost 2 weeks, he now spoke for 20 minutes. While governor listened politely, afterward Prabhupada sat and honored prasadam with the governor and his entourage for 15 ministers. After governor left, the devotees carried Prabhupada back to his room, where he collapsed with a 105-degree temperature. The political guest and military escort gone, the temple side returned to its usual quiet, and devotees resumed their soft kirtana, chanting by Prabhupada's bedside. Amazed at Prabhupada's strength and determination, they realized how they themselves were actually putting forth in Krishna consciousness. After 2 full weeks, Prabhupada's fever finally broke. A great ordeal was now over. The monsoon was ending, but the same problems of temperature, temple construction persisted. And so did Prabhupada's determination. His disciples also felt determined, and they resolved to work through all the bureaucratic delays and slow labor conditions. Now, no one was going to neglect spiritual regulation. Prabhupada spoke no more about his illness, and devotees around the world were informed of his improvement. They could stop the emergency kirtanas and go on with the work as usual. Prabhupada also resumed his usual duties regarding the temple construction. One thing was clear, however, Prabhupada was completely spiritual, and devotees working with him had engaged in a spiritual contract, a contract based on love and trust. He was taking their karma, and they had promised to follow his instructions. Now, despite his disappointment in them for their failures, that contract was still in order. If he continued to give his causeless mercy, then they could carry out his orders. Otherwise, they were without spiritual strength. For Prabhupada, there was never a question of not continuing. Even when he had suffered illness on his disciples' account, he had never thought to abandon them. After more than 2 weeks of not translating, Prabhupada resumed his work. He had been working quickly on the Chaitanya Charitamrita and was up to the discussions between Lord Chaitanya and Sanatan Goswami in Madhya Leela. Taking up where he had left off, Prabhupada again began rising early, studying Bengali translations and commentaries. He would turn on his dictating machines and begin to speak, his voice a faint, harsh whisper, but as he continued, his voice grew stronger, until by the end of an hour he was speaking normally. By the time he left Vrindavan, he was working unusually fast and producing 2 tapes a day. So, dear devotees, in the interest of time, we stop here. But this is heart crying pastimes of Prabhupada, that how in such a illness also he was contributing. Imagine a 70-year-old person came. He could have well settled in Vrindavan, and he was suffering multiple illness and still never give up. I mean, this description of Prabhupada shows that even in illness, you can still do our spiritual duties. How he was not even able to stand, but just to welcome the governor to the temple, he stood. He spoke 20 minutes. Can you imagine? He was such a spiritual. More than that, right? The dedication he showed is amazing. Actually, if we get ill, we need so much rest, isn't it? And also one more learning from this, of course, the inspiration from Prabhupada is, if we don't follow the rules and regulation or our sadhana bhakti, then our spiritual master suffers because of our karma. Our spiritual master may be 1,000 miles away. We are not able to see or hear about him. But definitely, when we do some activities staying away from sadhana, then our past karma, our spiritual master must be ill. We may not know. But the book tells, right? So we have to continue our spiritual strength, continue following promises we did to our spiritual master, right? And then Krishna will reciprocate by giving all the strength required. So we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Sat Sarup Das Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Anybody has any question, correction, chastisement, or any realization before we close and then continue chanting? All right. So if there is no question, we can wrap up. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। Anantakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai. So thank you, dear devotees, for listening to me, and please forgive me if I have not recited properly. So now we stop and then continue chanting.